And you're listening to Communities Live on Sheffield Live Radio 93.2 FM with me, Susie Casson, and we're joined by Harry Welburn.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, Harry.
Not often, I'm never on the radio in the afternoon. It's an interesting experience.
So you are the host of two shows on
I am,
Sheffield Live. Steel and Wire on Wednesdays.
Yes, which was on a little earlier at 10 o'clock. Yeah.
And a new show, Soul Plus.
Yes, which is again on 10 o'clock, but on a Saturday morning for an hour.
So how did you get into radio presenting?
Gosh, back in the last century, although I'm from York, I was living and working in Cambridge, and they had a community licence for a month, and they had it in the building where I was working, the community centre I was working in, and they were looking for people to fill because it was a 24-hour for a month, so they were looking for people to do a weekly show. So I did. I did a soul show, interestingly enough, because that seemed to be what I had best in terms of my vinyl, as it was then. And then I got into hospital radio, and then got into community radio proper, in that it was a full-time thing, not just a monthly licence. And then when I came up here, lucky enough, I got onto Sheffield Live, and thoroughly enjoying it.
So your show's been on this morning.
It has, yes.
Can you tell us a bit about Steel and Wire?
When the studio works properly, but it's Americana, American roots, which means things like bluegrass, Cajun, Zydeco, and something that's very strong here in Sheffield, old time, which is the sort of American rural music of the 20s and 30s. And the reason I'm doing that show is I'm giving a blatant plug now to a pub. The reason I live in Sheffield is because our two daughters, live here. The classic students who've stayed, and one of them lives quite near the Gardener's Rest, and they took me there, and the music in that pub for free is brilliant, and quite a few of those people now have put out CDs. They're all very local people, just play locally, and I thought there's enough here for a show. And I obviously liked the music and had some in my own CD collection. But the big turning point, I think, once the show got going, was to realise how much Americana there is here, which is more your country rock end. People like the Fargo Railroad Company, whose bass player Andy Dye was a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago. And what I try and do is alternate a guest with me playing records. And I try and play a lot of current stuff, and I try and play a lot of local stuff as well. And by local, I mean British as well. It's a very healthy little scene. It's just basically under the radar. Bluegrass is very strong here in Sheffield and nationally, and same with old time. But Americana is hello to Wagon Wheel Presents, who do a load of shows. Americana's a bit of a interesting. We're talking about that on air this morning, what it actually means. But it's a means of getting a lot of very good artists some profile, I think. Yeah. So no, I enjoy doing it immensely. You need to listen to find out what it's about, and every week is slightly different. But I tend to try and have a theme, not just stick on a few records. And I always try to say some stuff that's going to be on live locally. In the hope, I mean, I think the show for me is important if it gets anybody. Like I was at a show last night at Greystones, brilliant show, two local bands and visiting Americans who I'd never heard of. But our mate Matt came along, and he'd never seen the two local bands, and he was just blown away. And that's how good the music is locally. And if it gets a few people to go along and add to the crowd, I think that's what community radio is about.
Absolutely, lovely. And you've got a second show now.
Yes, I've always been into soul music. And when I moved up from Cambridge, I lost my soul show, but they let me keep my world music show. Well, I won't go on about that. But I really miss doing the soul show, so they've kindly let me do a soul. I've called it Soul Plus because I don't limit myself to Motown and people like that. Again, there's a lot of very good current soul acts. Actually not under the radar. If you watch later, Tony Memorial's been on, and who's from London, and next week you've got St Paul and the Broken Bones, who are not British but new and very good. The Temptations are on, so there is soul around, but there's some very good British soul around. But I called it Plus because I like things like Afrobeat and funk. Even jazz sneaks in, because I always do hello Pat Ryan, if you're listening, what Pat called the precursors of soul, which is the R&B and jazz and blues of the 20s, 30s and 40s. I'm not just plenty of people play straight soul, if you know what I mean. You can get that on commercial radio all the time, and I try and play the stuff that's slightly more rare, I'd say. But it's not that rare, but it just doesn't get airplay. But I just enjoy doing it. Yes.
Yeah. That's great. So the two sort of genres of music that perhaps don't get as much exposure, and you're also supporting local artists.
It's quite difficult on Soul Plus to support local artists, but I do try and feature. I mean, I think I'm featuring the specials this week, which may be stretching people's definition, but they're on, and they've got, and I just because I'm so sad that John Bradbury, their drummer, died, a brilliant drummer, and they obviously, although you can tell they're more from ska, they've got a soul feel to them. Unfortunately, I was going to play Walk the Dog by Rufus Thomas, their version, but it's full of swear words, so he can't do that at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. But this week I have Chris Hardy on, who I met in my local paper shop in Hillsborough, who turns out to be a soul fanatic of over 50 years. So he's coming in to talk about his memories of soul in Sheffield when he was a younger man. So, and he's my first studio guest, because Soul Plus, I think we're only in week 8, and I'm hoping to have guests on.
Fantastic.
So yes, hopefully it won't just be me like now going on and on and on. Your next question.
And you mentioned Cambridge. You have a show still in Cambridge?
Yes, they've managed. I'd still support them so as a member, and they've let me keep a world music show. But I just use it to basically now to just pile in all the music that doesn't fit Soul Plus and Steel and Wire.
Great.
So, yeah, but and every fortnight, 2 hours. It's interesting doing. Do you do an hour or 2 hours on this?
1 hour.
1 hour.
Yes.
Now 2 hour shows on your own is quite an interesting concept.
Imagine,
Yeah, have to do a lot more planning for that. But no, I still enjoy that, because there's a lot of music that you can't really squeeze. I mean, you can squeeze Afrobeat into soul, plus it's funk, a sort of funk version of funk music, but you can't really squeeze everything in. So it satisfies most of my musical needs.
Yeah, fantastic. Very busy.
Yes, no, enjoying it. Yeah.
And all 3 shows are available online.
They're all on Mixcloud. Yeah. I've got a Facebook page, Steel and Wire Sheffield, which is where I post up my Mixcloud, which is called Steel and Wire. But I can't even remember off the top of my head, and it was aired last night. I'm going to load it up this afternoon, what my Cambridge one is called. But I mean, the Sheffield ones are the ones I would hope people in Sheffield would listen to. But if you go on my Facebook page, Steel and Wire Sheffield, I post up a link to the Roots one as well.
Yeah. And why the title Steel and Wire?
Just creative genius. Because steel and wire is one of the things that instruments are made out of, and obviously I thought he had a very strong. Tell me anybody who's got a Sheffield show thing that hasn't got steel in it.
Yeah.
So I just thought, yeah.
Ah, very good.
Not that I can play an instrument at all, but yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So you include Sheffield music listings on Steel and Wire?
Steel and Wire a lot, and I'll be posting up tomorrow on my Facebook page a massive. There's just pages of it, because I go as far as Manchester. Because there's some you can get to Manchester quite easy. My rule was, when I started, was if people could get there and back in an evening, I would be happy to include it. There's a lot of good stuff in Leeds. There's a great lady out in Huddersfield called Maria, who puts a load of stuff on in Holmfirth and Huddersfield area, and York as well, which is my hometown, home city, sorry. That's got a good promoter out there. If anybody wants to send me information, if I realise it's not the sort of music that fits, but obviously I won't include it, but I'm happy to hear from people, because that's how people get to hear about stuff, Yeah.
And lots of live music going on in Sheffield.
Yes.
Which are your own favourite venues for live music?
Well, I've mentioned the Gardeners. Very definitely Greystones. Great. I was there last night seeing Fargo and M&J Blues, who are on soon at a pub I've never been in, the Porter Cottage. Shakespeare's, but I don't go in there very often. But they've got through Wangwheel Promotes, they're now doing a monthly Americana show. I have done for a very, very long time. It's mainly Greystones, because I've actually started to pay. Though I'm a Yorkshireman, because Greystone, I have to say, there's about 8 promoters at Greystones, and between them they put on an amazing range of music. And, lots, and I think Sheffield is particularly lucky for Americana and bluegrass. We even had a Cajun band on, thanks to the Talking Gigs people. And that seriously is rarer than hen's teeth, whatever that actually means. But yeah, it's very unusual to get a Cajun Zydeco band, I think, north of Watford. hardly exist.
Yeah.
I've not found anybody locally playing Cajun or Zydeco or Western Swing, which I'm featuring next week on Steel and Wire.
Yeah.
No, Greystones very definitely.
Fantastic. It's great to hear that Sheffield's live music scene's thriving.
It is, yeah. No, I mean, there are people who come on, I'm sure will tell you about loads of other pubs where there's live music, but they're the ones I particularly go to.
And this is Communities Live on Sheffield Live Radio 93.2 FM with me, Susie Casson, and T-Boy's just gone out to the kitchen again.
I'm in the kitchen.
Oh, he's here.
Give me a drink.
He's particularly bad-tempered today.
I thought that was him on his good day.
And we're joined in the studio by Harry Welburn,
Hello again.
host of Steel and Wire and Soul Plus.
Yep.
And we were talking about the Sheffield live music scene. Which are your favourite Sheffield-based bands?
I'm going to be extremely careful here because
Some of your
I love them all. Well, Pluck is one. Pitsmore Ladies Ukulele Chorale, who came on and were guests, and they rarely perform, and they're just wonderful, really. And they were brilliant in the studio. Very funny act, and again, he hardly ever performs. But Merston Bapchild and the Braxton Hicks, who are a 50s country radio show stroke Hank Williams band. Seriously good. Hello, Bob and Izzy, and everybody involved in their bands. I mean, and then that's at one end of the spectrum. I play April in the Shower. Saw them first time. Jackalope Tales. There's Dogwood Rose. They've all had albums out, and then you've got people like the Fargo. And although they don't quite fit my show, but M&J Blues are. I mean, like I said, my mate Matt for the first time, and first time you see M&J Blues, I think everybody just cannot believe how good a player the son is. And then the second time you see them, you also then realise how good a singer Dad is. And they've got an album out soon, and they are absolutely wonderful. I mean, when you go and see a lot of gigs, you must have been to gigs where you just hear everybody's talking through the support acts, waiting for the main act. No, not in the Greystones last night. People were because Fargo were on first, and Jodie is an exceptional songwriter-singer. Mike's a very good guitarist. And the other two, as Andy said, are meat and potatoes. They keep it going. But they did it acoustic. I've never seen them do the acoustic. I know they could do it. But again, there was no background noise, even though the pub were doing a quiz. Bizarrely, if you know the Greystones, you perform in the back room and the main pub is still a pub. But no, there's some of them, and there will be. My apologies if I've forgotten anybody. There's just loads and loads of people out there. Now that's before you get into the fact that Sheffield has a worldwide reputation for folk music. I mean, the Rheingun sisters are on this weekend at Shakespeare's. There's loads of good music all the time in Sheffield, and not in the. So sound like I'm being critical, but without having to go to the O2 Academy. Yeah, just great music. Yeah.
Fantastic. So you're a relative newcomer to Sheffield.
Yeah, the girls have been. Hannah's actually been here, I think, 12 years as a student, and then living here.
So besides music venues, which are your favourite places?
At Neep's End, we were talking about it off air because not just because the gardener's down there. We actually did we've been doing some walks, me and my mate Brian, and now Matt, for Sheffield University of the Third Age. Brian's done a music walk, and I've helped him do it, and we've done two now in the city centre. But we offered to do one that wasn't city centre based, and we did one in Neep's End, and it's because Neep's End is Neep's End, as Pat pointed out to me quite sternly, Neep's End isn't Kelham Island, isn't Bridge Houses, so we had to be very accurate about where we were. But I find that a fascinating area to walk around. It's also flat. I'm not brilliant. No, I enjoy walking up hills up to a point. No, I think if I go for a walk. Oh, and the other one is me and my wife walk the Loxley Valley and walk do the Don Valley up to Ooty Bridge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we're Hillsborough-sided people, so that tends to be where we go.
Fantastic. Yeah. So last Saturday you took part in St Luke's Night Strider half marathon.
I did.
How did that go?
Thanks to the fact that I was walking with my youngest daughter, Jessica, it was fine. Because it was my third, actually. I'd done the pub crawl one, which was much more than half a marathon because I then had to walk home. because we finished so late. And then I did one earlier this year, the Yorkshire Half Marathon, which was a run. I didn't run, I walked, but that was very competitive. I went off far too fast, didn't drink enough water. So, and my daughter Jess has been doing the steps thing and taking it very seriously whilst enjoying it. And she was just wonderful company. And it was a brilliantly, I have to say, St Luke's Hospice, brilliantly organised event. I was quite suspicious what it would actually be like. It was a big odd-shaped figure of 8 round Endcliffe Park. And I just wondered how it would go. And they had marshals. Rob, who was on talking about needing marshals they had marshals everywhere. It was a very well run, but very, very friendly. And as I took an hour longer than I did for the other one, it was much easier. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And do we know how much they raised yet?
No, I don't. Sorry. I know they need I think it's something nearly about 3/4 of their funding comes through fundraising. So again, very Sheffield, although they're a national organisation, you are fundraising, I understand, for Sheffield to keep the hospice running here. Yeah. Extremely important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. So we've got the 2 shows, Steel and Wire and Soul Plus. What do you enjoy most about being a radio presenter?
Sorry, I shouldn't have gone down the microphone. Chaos, I think. I mean, it was absolute chaos in here this morning, as it usually is when we have a guest. But because then you don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't help when the microphone turns off. But that is fun, because suddenly it's unrehearsed. Which is why I like to alternate the shows with not having a guest, where I actually play the music that I would like other people to hear. I suppose I wouldn't like to do a show if I was just playing music for the sake of filling an hour. I like to play music because I think it's worth other people listening. And I cannot stress how much, compared with Cambridge, I have found the Sheffield music scene to be so vibrant and so varied, and the quality of it. Kelly McRae, who was on last night, they are professional Americans who tour all the time. They're not famous, but that's their full-time job. And yet the 2 Sheffield bands lost absolutely nothing in comparison to them. And I think that says lots about the standard of music in Sheffield.
Yeah, great. And I was going to ask, any up-and-coming bands that you've noticed?
No, I'm not really. They all tend to be quite old.
Oh, that's good.
They all tend to be not quite as old as me, but they all tend to be. Yes, that's unfair. There will be younger people, but I don't go out and see. I've never gone out and seen soul bands. There are some around, because you've introduced me to Mick Johnson's band.
Oh, yes.
I'm aware of them.
The G-Men Soul Band.
G-Men, but there's not many bands, I think, doing soul.
No.
There's quite a lot more doing Americana, but I think I may be damning them with faint praise, but I don't think any of them would regard themselves as young. I mean, they're up and coming, because people. Well, Ash Gray was on today. Sorry, Ash, you're probably the youngest. And he's slowly building his career around here. But most people are being Sheffield centred. I think a lot of them it's their other career, but it is a career. It's like I think a lot of folk musicians are doing another job as well. Not all of them by any means.
Yeah, and it's the same with spoken word and poetry, isn't it?
Yes,
it's everywhere.
Yes. There's lots of talent about, and it's a hard road to travel to make it your career.
Yes,
and I think a lot of people balance it up. I mean, I think the good thing is you can, because it's about the music, I think, less than the performance. Although I would say again, the performances last night were excellent, but they weren't staged. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I think, again, because they're not about performance, you can have a music career your whole life. I mean, Martin Simpson, I've never met him, but I mean, I've read about him saying, he realised when he was 55 and stuck in a car drift somewhere in Canada on his own that perhaps, he'd had enough of this. But Jenny Murray, Woman's Hour, Radio 4 says he's the world's greatest guitarist. He's a superb guitarist. He's had a career. He's got a house. He's got, he's not made millions, but he's got a great career out of it. Because I think he's been allowed to carry on doing the things he does. Whereas, without naming any Sheffield bands who have been in the charts, you just wonder whether they now get the opportunity to play, or people just want them to do that one hit.
Yes.
Yeah. Rather than evolve or whichever direction they want to travel in. And I'd say again, what is nice about the music, I think I play, and why I definitely called it Soul Plus, it's because music evolves. It's good music, but it's also interesting if it's moving on as well.
And Sheffield's been voted the happiest place to live, and I think people are just happy and content, aren't they?
They are when the studio works. No, they are. I mean, it's a great place. I mean, sorry, I won't bang on about Cambridge because that's unfair. We have lots of good friends in Cambridge, but it's a different. I mean, Cambridge is London-centric, really, and university-centric. I mean, I think the universities here contribute so much to the city, but to the city, not just to the economy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a massive difference. Yeah. No, I'm very pleased that our daughters came here and that we followed them.
Yeah, lovely. So you've got the 3 shows. Any ambitions that you'd like to?
What, musically?
In anything, really?
Yes. I'm a volunteer at the Essex Food Bank, which I find incredibly valuable and enjoyable. And I'd like to combine with the music to do some fundraising gigs for them. And my mate Brian, who's a regular on the show, we're going to get him involved on Sheffield Live. Maybe hopefully get a programme that links our 2 shows on a Wednesday. But he keeps saying I should put on some Steel and Wire gigs, and I think we're going to try and take that step on next year. I don't want to make a profit. I want the profit to be for charities. I mean, again, I have to say one of the reasons I did the half marathon, the first one, is because the year before I'd watched the half marathon and my cousin was in it. Sorry, my nephew was in it, and one of Jess's best friends, and I saw them run around. And then you're walking back down Ecclesfield Road, and there is Mad John, the walker, the Mad Walker, pushing his pram, and you think, if this guy can do it, you can. He is an inspiration, and I think if there's any way people can help John achieve his 1 million, it would be it's already what he's done is unbelievable. Yeah. But it's people like John who are just around in the city. There's loads of not John, he's pretty rare, but there's just loads of brilliant people around in this city. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on.
No, I'm thank you for delighted to have been asked.
Yeah.
We'll have to reciprocate.
Yes. And Steel and Wire is on every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday, 10 till 11, and then when I get home, I'll upload it onto Mixcloud for people who've missed it or can't believe how chaotic this week's was. And then the Facebook page carries the live locally list as well. And Soul Plus is Saturday mornings 10 to 11. Do tune in for Chris Hardy. He's a lovely bloke. He's got a great story about Stevie Wonder, which I hope he will tell. And then that gets uploaded onto Mixcloud, and you can access both of those through my Facebook page.